Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about how you can learn foreign language effectively, even if you are not a language genius. Some people ask me how I studied my foreign languages, including Chinese, Japanese, and English. So, I wanted to share some of the tips and some of the methodology I use to learn, and I hope that what I'm going to share with you could help you learn foreign languages efficiently and effectively in the future. Before I start, I want you to make a statement that although there are a lot of people on YouTube, if you search like multilingual, polyglots, you will see a lot of people who are able to speak like 10, 15, 17 languages. And that's just not who I am. Well, of course, I'm not one of them, but I believe that as a layperson who is not genius, anyone can learn up to 3 to 4 languages if they are really serious about it. And that's what I'm going to talk. I really wanted to say that anyone can do this by using some of the methodology I have used, although I'm not a genius like one of them. The first tip I have is look up every time in question. What I mean by look up every time in question is that when you think of some expression, like in your mother tongue, you know what you're going to say. But just think about how am I going to say in a foreign language? So first thing is ask your friend, how would you say this in this circumstance? For example, when I was with one of my Chinese friends walking and I was really starved to death. So at that time I just wanted to know how I could say I'm starved to death in Chinese from one of my Chinese friends. And my friend told me there's 前胸贴后背, which literally means that your chest is being glued to your back. And to this day, I have never forgotten this expression because I really vividly remember that situation. I asked a friend, he replied to me, you remember expression in the context, not from a textbook, and that really helps you retain your memory. Well then, what if you don't have your foreign friend around? Then use your smartphone, use Google Translator app. Whenever you come up with a word or expression you want to say in a foreign language but you don't know yet. So in the end, I want to say that learning curve really depends on how interested you are, how willing you are to learn a language. You should be always curious to learn something even when you are not learning a language in a classroom. The second step is persistence. I know it's very cliche. Everybody has to be persistent in learning a language. But there is a way to be persistent very effectively. So one thing I do is look up newspaper online every day on this specific language expression. The below is a section from Chosun newspaper about Chinese, Japanese, and English expressions. So every day one expression is uploaded online. And I read this every day when I get up in the morning. Go somewhere by taking subway or run on the treadmill. So you see, if you learn one expression every day on weekdays, you learn 250 expressions per year. And that really is something. You are learning everything new every single day. And by being persistent, you're learning a lot. How did I learn all these vocabularies? So when I was young, about to enter the middle school, there was like an electronic dictionary. At that time, it was really popular, so everybody had one pretty much, trying to study English by looking up words. What I did was first save all vocabulary I did not know. Anything that I came across I didn't know, I just saved it in the dictionary. Second, look up the list every single time. Third, delete those saved words if I know 100% and confident that I just have memorized them. And repeat until vocabulary runs out of this dictionary. So I have looked up my dictionary so often that the pads on the keyboard pretty much wore off and I had to replace it with new keypads. So how would you really learn vocabulary effectively? And this is what I'm going to talk here. You don't learn words from A to Z by opening a dictionary, but you learn them by their origins. So for example, I'm going to give you an example on this word spect, which means to see in Latin. So the first example is expect. EX means out. So you're looking out, so you know what's going to happen. You're expecting something to happen. Second one is circumspect. Circum means surrounding, as in circumstance. So you're looking around, and by looking around, you're being very cautious and careful. So that's what it means. You're being cautious. Respect. You're looking at something or someone again, and you just keep looking at it again and again, and you're thinking of that person in high regards. Fourth is inspect. You're looking inside, and you're checking. And it's simple as that. Lastly, spectator. Spect is to see. Ater means pretty much audience and onlookers. So you also look at other words such as aviator, which means a pilot, and gladiator, which also means sword fighter. And these words are also the title of some movies that we know really well, such as The Aviator and Gladiator. So if you associate words you're trying to memorize with pop culture, movies, and etc., you will tend to remember them more because you're associating the words you're memorizing with something you already know very well. So the second example is constellation. We don't know what it means without knowing what these con and stellation means. So let's look at one by one. Con means together and with. So for example, there's a word construct. It also consists of the word con and stuere, which is to mean build. So if you're constructing, you are building together. So it means build up. Convene is con plus venir, which means to come. So you're either coming to somewhere in a group or you're bringing together for a meeting or activity. And you can also see some related words like convention, which means large meeting, and venue, which means a place of happening. And next is stella, and it means something associated with stars. So you know a movie Interstellar a few years ago. So this movie's title consists of the words inter and stella. Inter means between, and stella means stars or planets. So even before looking at this movie, you will know that this is probably going to be a movie about space trip between stars and planets, and which is actually the case. So back to the original word. So constellation means a group of stars that are put together to form a certain pattern on the sky. So if you can break down the words into different parts, know their origin of prefixes and suffixes, then you can guess the meanings of these words even before you look them up in the dictionary. By using this method, you can guess the meaning of some of the most difficult English vocabulary in the world. For instance, can you guess what euthanasia means? If you don't know, then let's break this word into two parts. The EU part means pleasure. So, for example, there's a word euphemism. It means a mild or indirect word or expression because you are trying to speak very pleasantly to someone. Euphoria means a feeling of intense excitement and happiness because you're bearing a pleasure. It's very simple once you know all these breakdown of the words. And lastly, Thana is a god of death in Greece mythology. So altogether, euthanasia means death in pleasure, and that is painless killing. And if you look at the word group below, you see that there are a lot of parts of the words that are similar or the same across them. For example, circumlocution and circumnavigation. We have learned circum means around, and you just add locution and navigation at the back to create a new word. International, interactive, intercept, they're all the same. And this list of words that are similar can go on and on and on and on. And you don't need to memorize them. You simply need to know what these parts individually mean, and you put them together to create new meaning. Now let's turn our attention to Chinese characters. I have this word resolve here, and this one looks really complicated. There's no way I can remember this. But trust me, there's a way to break this down and remember this word by parts of it. So if you break this word into three parts, you see there's a cow, horn, and a knife. So if you think about it, if you put them together, what kind of image can you create? I remember this character, Resolve, by resolving a problem by cutting out cow's horn with knife. So cow's horn is too long. So you're trying to shorten it by just cutting it out. So you have resolved the problem. I know it sounds a little bit stupid, it sounds a little bit childish at the same time, but trust me, if you do this, you will remember this word without memorizing it, and that's very effective. Second principle of memorizing Chinese character involves understanding phonetic part and ideograms and putting them together to create a new word. What do I mean by this? Let's take example of the word qing, meaning blue. So this forms a basic phonetic part for the following words. The first example is a word for clean. It's pronounced as qing, which is the same as phonetic part, but it means something a little bit different, and that meaning is derived from the left side of the word, this, and it denotes water. So water is clean here, so the word qing means clean. The second one is clear weather, qing. Again, the pronunciation is the same as qing, but the left side denotes a day or the weather. So it means clear weather. The next one is request, pronounced as qing. The left side means words. So you're requesting something with words. Lastly, it's cold, qing, because of ice on the left. So if you look at all these words, you realize that it's all pronounced the same as qing. Of course, there's an intonation variation, but the basic phonetic part is qing. And the word's meaning varies by the left side. And that's what really determines the final meaning of the words. And more than 80% of Chinese characters are formed by combining this phonetic part with ideogram, which denotes a meaning. So you have now learned all these vocabulary and words, and you're now prepared to speak. Then how would you go about practicing your speaking? So for me, after learning all these vocabulary and words, I started memorizing complete grammar structure. This left picture pretty much shows Chinese grammar structure in Korean. I have memorized this entire grammar structure like completely even before I was able to speak something. Now, do I remember this? No, I don't remember at all. But does it really matter? No, not at all. Because now I don't even need to recall this graph or picture for me to be able to speak, because now I can just speak whatever I want in Chinese without this. So the key is you memorize all the vocabulary that you can use as like a basic stone in your grammar structure. This grammar structure, you just need to memorize. There's no efficient way to doing this. But once you're done with it, move on to speaking. So this is one of my recommendations for anyone who's interested in increasing their speaking abilities in a short period of time. Phone lesson. Teachers give students a call for language classes. When I was learning Chinese, I did 15 minutes every day and 20 times a month for 9 months. And that translates into 1,000 minutes per month. And if you think about it, 1,000 minutes per month is a lot. Even if you live in a foreign country, it is not easy to have an opportunity to speak entirely in your foreign language. And it's very convenient because you don't need to physically go to a private institution. Rather, the teacher gives a call to you on a set time that you prefer. And you can actually actively lead a class rather than just following the set curriculum, because whatever you want to learn, you can just simply initiate with your teacher. So I usually started conversation with what has happened on that day, followed by some of the current affairs and news out there, such as Korea and China relationship, what I think about it. And even after that, if I have still some left time, then I would talk about, textbooks, learn from the expressions, and the teacher would give me a lot of correction. This is so flexible and convenient, and I think this is pretty much the most cost-effective way to hone up your speaking skills. So after having all this and being able to speak in Chinese without fear, I then went to Tsinghua University for exchange student. So pretty much I took advantage of all the opportunities that Tsinghua has to offer. So I went to Language Corner for Chinese and English, and I participated in a lot of student organizations like quiz shows, traveling program, where I got to travel to middle part of China with a bunch of Chinese students, and also studied surprisingly Japanese at Tsinghua University by taking advantage of cherry blossom event, Japanese events, and Chinese classes. If you can choose to go to exchange student, you must go, because I feel that this is the only time in our lives where we can get completely immersed into different culture without worrying about grade or money. Next, I strategically chose the order of the languages that I studied. Naturally, I started learning English first because everybody was required to learn English from the elementary school, but fortunately I really enjoyed learning it with words, memorization, and expression. And that has laid the foundation for my future language learning experiences. Chinese, I learned Chinese characters when I was really young. I simply enjoyed learning the principle behind how Chinese characters are formed, because if you look at it, there are a lot of stories associated with how each of the Chinese character is formed. So I really enjoy imagining how this Chinese word is structured, and that really helped me when I went to foreign language high school in Korea and started learning, real Chinese. And lastly, I learned Japanese once pretty much I have finished learning English and Chinese to a certain level. So it's very easy for Korean to learn Japanese because grammar structure is pretty much identical. So being a Korean is really, really helpful for learning Japanese. But on top of that, Japanese use a lot of English words and English expressions. And also, Japanese use a lot of Chinese characters called kanji, So basically, I have learned English and Chinese, and Japanese use them. And Japanese grammar structure are very similar to Korean. So once I have finished them, it was very easy for me to, learn Japanese. And I was actually surprised at how fast I learned Japanese. And learning curve definitely accelerates as you learn more. And you need to really be careful in choosing which order you want to learn language, because learning a certain specific language really will help you learning the second one. Because there is definitely synergy created from multiple languages, and brain pretty much remembers that you have learned a certain language before, so it will definitely accelerate the process of learning another one. Lastly, but not least important, it's pure interest. Learning a language is like a marathon. It's not something like a short distance sprint where you just finish studying for an exam and you're done with it. No, it's not that. You need to keep studying the language really for a long time, potentially for a few years, to be able to speak quite fluently. I strongly believe that a language is inseparable from its culture, its society, history, politics, economics, every part of that country. So I think in order to be able to sustain your long-term interest in learning a language, you need to really love that part of the world. For example, if you are learning Japanese, there are so many different sources to learn Japanese from. For example, animations, movies, and so on. In the end, it all comes down to how much you like the country. Otherwise, it's easy to give up. So far, I have pretty much spoken about how I have sustained my interest in a language, how I studied, and showed you pretty much some of the basic methods that I have used to memorize words and, some of the habits to develop when learning a language. Next time, I'll cover a little bit further from this point, where I would like to talk about why I study foreign languages so much and what is so good about it. And thanks for watching this video. And if you had enjoyed my video and presentation, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like my video.